We're here with Una Burke, who has joined us for our series of conversations on prosthetics. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Una is a multi-award-winning artist and designer based in London. You've exhibited internationally and now you are showing some of your sculptures downstairs as part of our show cabinet exhibition on prosthetics. And we're going to have a talk about the subject today. So my first question is that when I first approached you about doing the exhibition, you were really adamant that you wanted the focus to be on prosthetics. Can you tell me what it is about the topic that you find so interesting?
For me, I suppose the main thing about it is the taking of a negative situation and making it positive. That's the key thing with me, and it comes through in all of my work, really. Also with prosthetics, the form of them and the sculptural qualities of them, but it's mainly about that positivity coming from negativity. For me, that's the strongest thing, and all my work relates to the body, and this is so key to the body. It's the changing of it and the improvement of it. That's about the positivity. That's the main thing.
And I suppose that really kind of talks about what we're doing in the exhibition. We're looking at the way prosthetics can adorn, they can equip, they can enhance.
Well, I like that, the way when we started talking about it, we all started kind of focusing on that idea and bringing it through so that it wasn't a negative subject, that it was looking at the positive aspects of it. We're all very enthusiastic about that and bouncing ideas around about how we could do that.
Yeah. So prosthetics kind of signal two things. One is one of extension and one is of amputation. They can be enabling and restrictive.
Yeah.
And I think that comes through in your work very much. They could be an empowering suit of armour or a very claustrophobic straitjacket.
Yeah.
I mean, how important is that to you?
Well, about the event that you need a prosthetic, that's traumatic as it is. And my graduate work has dealt with that subject of trauma very strongly and very much in a focused way, and looking at types of armour as kind of visual representation of protective emotional barriers that we would put in place after that. And that idea of restriction for healing comes through in medical braces and that. So it all kind of comes together in that reference to trauma. And, you know, as I said, like, it's a traumatic experience to need a prosthetic arm or leg or whatever limb. But then it's so positive that these days you can do something about it, and people's lives can be improved because of that. I don't know if that answers your question.
And kind of thinking hypothetically, have you ever thought about making a functioning prosthetic?
Well, yeah, actually I've had another artist contact me recently, and we may be doing a project together, hopefully in the future, where I'll work with her prosthetic maker, who's very excited about the idea as well. I think it could be really interesting to do it for real, because what I've done so far is that I've made reference to it through my work. And I suppose this life-size puppet, the fragmented figure that I've just created for this film and for this exhibition, that's the closest I've come to really making it a working object. And it's interesting that things like the knee joints and the elbow joints are where I struggled technically, but also it's the areas, I suppose, that have the most room for playing around with as well, because otherwise you've got this long section of the leg kind of thing, which is a flat area, but this area that needs to function, it's really difficult. And I found that with my graduate collection as well. I just hated knees and elbows. They made me cry. But yeah, so with this artist, I think maybe we will probably do that, hopefully within the next year or two.
And aesthetically, how would you approach it?
Well, it needs to be functioning, but I think we'd probably make it something that enhances rather than something that blends in with the body. I think that's much more interesting for the wearer as well, that they get to have something that other people are envious of. I had, for my first kind of commercial collection I created, it was Spring Summer 11, I created this one neck brace, and it came from an email that I got from a girl in South Korea who'd been in an accident, a car accident, and she'd had severe neck and spinal damage, and she'd been in a medical neck brace for months, and emailed me and said that she was so sick of people feeling sorry for her and saying, what happened, you poor thing. She was sick of the pity, that she told me she wanted to wear something that when somebody would look at it, they'd go, wow, that's amazing, and they'd be really envious. And that again is the same element of taking a negative thing and turning it into something positive. So yeah, I've probably gone on a tangent again.
No, not at all. So basically it would be less of a kind of disguise.
Yes.
And more of a kind of garment, like you would approach one of your collections.
Yeah, that enhances, which is what this exhibition is about.
Yeah.
Enhancing the body.
And we've spoken a little bit about how trauma comes through in your work, and obviously the way that prosthetics also signal a trauma, whether it be through surgery or illness that somebody has had to replace a missing or defective limb. Have you used that as a kind of language to explore the idea of trauma?
Well, as I briefly mentioned earlier, I studied a lot of psychology papers when I was doing my master's collection, and I decided for that because it was fashion artifact that I studied, and so I could have gone down the route of making something that you could functionally wear on the catwalk or that, but I actually decided to disregard that, because when I was doing my master's I said, well, I'm going to be doing commercial things for long enough, trying to make money, so I decided to make things that were specifically for exhibition purposes, and so through that I could create pieces that referenced medical braces and that, like straight jackets, where the arms were trapped, and that was as a result of reading so many psychology papers as to relating to how people recover from a trauma. So there's so many different ways that people recover, but there's also common recovery processes as well. There's certain ones that just seem to come through, like some people will respond either in a positive way or a negative way. I'm no expert in this area, but I have a strong interest in it, which is why I decided to bring my interests together and make something very strong. But yeah, like some people will become the perpetrator of a traumatic act on somebody else, and that's a negative response to it. And then other people will take the experience of a trauma and they will learn from it, and they will use that insight and protect other people from something traumatic, like a school teacher looks after her children, that kind of way. And so I'm interested in the two sides of the coin, and I suppose the irony that comes through as well, how something so negative can be such a positive thing in your life, and it can make you so strong, because I think our children or our parents bring us up and they do their best to protect us, but yet no matter what you do for a child, you're either going to protect them too much or protect them too little, and that's one aspect of it. I also looked at domestic abuse, at child war trauma, read so many psychology papers on these things. So It's just, I mean, it's based on my general observations of these things, but as I said, I'm no expert, it's just my opinion. I also looked at the work of artists and other designers and how they would approach that subject as well.
Yeah.
For a reference point.
So that was a kind of a body of work, wasn't it, where you
Yeah.
kind of took each of those emotional responses and then transposed them into a kind of physical gesture that kind of communicated
I used
that feeling.
the language of gesture to demonstrate that, and the more I dealt with that subject, the more response I got, and to see, like there's different gestures that we would all associate with different things, and no matter what colour our skin is, no matter what religion we are, no matter what country we come from, you know, we all understand gestures of kind of torment or gestures of love. It actually goes across boundaries, and that was really interesting for me, because the more I went on with the project, the more I realised that, and then the more I could use that. And even when I finished the collection, and one of my first shoots that I had my pieces that I sent on was Patty Wilson took a piece that has the arm twisted around the back like that, and that was obviously me showing somebody in a position of torment. But then Patty turned it around and put it on the model like this, so that the arm was in a sling. And it was really nice to see my work interpreted by somebody and pushing my idea even further. I really enjoyed that, and I like that interaction between creative people. Like, I create a piece of work and I give it to stylists and curators, and they create a story with it, and they take my idea and it bounces back to me again, and then I can take what they interpreted from it and do another element of it. Then I really enjoy that.
And so maybe we can talk a little bit about the piece downstairs. You made that specifically for us, with this idea of prosthetics in mind. Can you tell us a little bit about your conceptual process? Do you know what the piece will look like when you begin, or is that much more of an organic process?
It varies. Usually I start off with a drawing, but again, the knees and elbows will come along and they'll fight you on that. So yeah, I do start with the drawing. I aim to do what I can there, but then there's obviously, because it's a handmade product, there's technicalities that will come up along the way. It's almost as I wanted it. There's still some things I'd love to do, but I mean, I can do more. So, yeah.
And it is very much, again, another fragmented body.
Yeah.
And that's what you titled it.
Yeah.
And is that the concept that you were going for?
Yeah, well, that was kind of coming from the functionality. It needed to be fragmented, because pieces I've done in the past had like structured, restricted gestures, whereas I wanted to be able to really make this come to life. And so on the inside of this piece, actually, I had to get a friend of mine to help me to put all these dowel rods on the inside to give it more support, so that when we were literally flinging limbs around from the scaffolding, bringing it to life, that it wouldn't, you know, kind of cave in or anything like that.
So that was obviously because we made the fashion film.
Yeah.
Directed by our head of fashion film, Marie Schuller.
Yeah.
We did literally bring the piece to life.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what you hope to
fun.
achieve from the film, and how it was to do that?
It was really exciting. It was very scary to see would it work, because it was literally on the day we found out if it was going to work or not. Yeah, it was really nice to have a new element to my work, and yeah, that development of it, the evolution of the body, and nice to see it functioning and telling a story. Like there was a story line in the film about, you know, at the end the limbs are disjointed, and so it's relevant to the exhibition. It was interesting. I loved it. I'm glad I did it. And I enjoyed it. I hadn't made an art piece for so long. I'd been focusing on the fashion pieces, and there was something really craving within my soul going, no, you have to do something a little bit deeper.
And so each of you, like, this is quite a big body of work now. You know, you've created quite a few sculptural figures. Do each of them have a life of their own in the way that this one came to life?
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see how this one reacts to time, I suppose, because every one of the other pieces have got stains on them from different things. Because they were undyed vegetable tanned leather, I did do a surface waxing to protect them, but still it's a very delicate material, and I wanted it to be that way, and the colour of it's like Caucasian skin. There's areas of it that if you pull one piece back, you'll see the natural colour from when it was born, I suppose. When it was first made is really pale and pure. It's all damaged by time, but that's life. That's what we are like as human beings. We're a result of the things that we're exposed to in our life, whether that's our parenting or our schooling or, you know, different events in our life. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And like, you can look at them and go, they're really damaged, or you can look at them and go, they literally have had a life of their own. I could have a diary for every one of them. I have somewhat of a diary because I know, you know, different exhibitions each piece has been in, different shoots that they've been on. They have had their own kind of growing up. They're probably teenagers now.
And you work almost exclusively in leather. Is it those qualities of aging that really draw you to it?
Yeah, it's I mean, that the aging process is beautiful. It's interesting. And I suppose the heritage of the material, it's a beautiful, strong, natural material. It's got very strong characteristics, and I admire strength. Also, my grandfather was a cobbler, and his father was a cobbler as well. And actually, I didn't even know my grandfather really. I was 2 when he died. But I think it's very interesting the way that craft nature can be in you through your genes and you don't even know it. And I didn't know why I loved leather so much, but I was just drawn to it. It's that idea of creating something from scratch using your hands and literally putting your blood, sweat and tears into it, and it takes all of them sometimes. That collection did anyway. But yeah, it's such a beautiful material, and just like how it gets better with age. I really love that about it. Yeah.
And you've talked a little bit about your craft. It's obviously a very repetitive and very time-consuming craft.
Yeah.
How did you develop, you know, the way that you work?
Well, to be honest, I was shockingly bad at flat patterns when I was studying fashion. So in order to still be able to do what I wanted to do, I had to devise my own means of creating things. So I decided to work on the stand, and I came up with this construction process, and you know, then applied it to different areas of the body and played around, and then let the leather actually do what it wanted to do. So I suppose I started the process, and then it led me where it wanted to go. And that's why I like the material, because it helps you kind of develop its own form as well. It knows what it wants to do. So yeah, that's kind of how they develop. Yeah, there's always struggle with certain technicalities because I have that drawing that I wanted to aim for. But yeah, I don't know if I've answered that.
And so, do you actually work on a mannequin, or do you thought you do?
Yeah, I build it up on the mannequin. So like, I'll start with the center of the mannequin, and I'll have my straps of leather, and then it'll kind of evolve around the mannequin, but I always work on the mannequin. I had to buy this bendy mannequin for making some of my pieces, and she's quite scary actually. I even had to fatten her up with like padding around. She was so skinny. But I also have made arms for some of my mannequins, so that I can take the arms and put them into those gestured poses but with, like, I couldn't use the regular kind of tailor's dummies to do the kneeling legs or pieces like that, because just it wasn't going to work for me. But yeah, it's interesting, the idea of making the tools in order to make the final product as well, because it's like, it's good problem solving. I like problem solving.
And so obviously there's two branches to your work. There's the sculptural aspect, and then there's also the collections that you release each season. How do they kind of inform each other?
Well, I try to bring through the same type of concepts in my fashion collections. It's not so easy because you're restricted by the functionality. Like, I could take the same concepts and apply them to art pieces and could probably do so much more, be less inhibited. But the forms come through, and as I said, that piece from my first collection, which was the neck brace, that came from that concept, and that was very strong and kind of ticked both boxes. Like, it was so sculptural. They're all very sculptural. That's one way they definitely cross. My processes, they're all handcrafted. Everything's like hand cut, hand beveled, edge polished. Every hole is punched by hand. So in that way, they're the same process. With another piece from the same collection, actually, I took the hip form and applied it to the back and created a jacket called the hunchback jacket. And that was that idea of taking something that people perceive. We all have our ideas of what beauty is, and that idea of taking somebody's preconceptions and flipping them upside down and going, is that ugly now? Just trying to think out of the box and trying to question what we all think we know. I suppose that's my artist's approach to a fashion collection, and also the time I take over things. Like, I'll have a piece, there'll be one or two key strong storyline pieces, and then some simpler easily wearable pieces in every collection. And so the very strong storyline ones will sit on the mannequin for weeks, and I'll come in, and I suppose that is how I see it as some sort of an art form. Is I'll have to go away and come back and view it like, I suppose, an artist comes in and looks at a painting that they're doing. It'll take a long time to evolve because you need to give yourself the space from it to let it develop itself and kind of talk to you in a way.
And then finally, you belong to a kind of group of artists who have kind of dealt with this theme of prosthetics. Many of your peers from university and things are exhibiting alongside you downstairs, also going back, Lee McQueen, Victor and Rolf, Comme des Garçons. There's been a very interesting body of work around the subject, and I just would love to hear who your main influences have been.
I have to say, I try not to look at fashion, at other fashion designers, because it's too easy to be led by that and become similar accidentally. Every designer struggles with that. But I would say when I was doing my master's and when I was developing that first prosthetic related collection, I did look at Lee McQueen's work. It was from the point of view of looking at his life and his upbringing and seeing how it influenced his work. And so it wasn't directly looking at something that he had done, but it was thinking about his thought process. And I also looked at several other artists like Anthony Gormley, Hans Bellmer, and his use of not live object, I forget the word, inanimate object, an inanimate object, that was in the shape of the human form, creating storylines with it. And you know, he created uproar through the poses that he left his doll in while he photographed it, the doll that he created. And I suppose that's again the process of what I was talking about. He made the doll in order to show the photographs. He didn't actually show the doll ever, really, as far as I know anyway. But yeah, I was more influenced by artists. And and Anthony Gormley, who was, you know, a serious sufferer of claustrophobia as a child, and he was so strong that he made himself recover from this. And now he, you know, every piece of work that he creates is a cast of his own body, and like he has had to have a cast put around him, and that's so brave. I admire that so much. But yeah, I mean, Lee McQueen would definitely have been one of the ones that I would have looked at. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for talking with me. It's been absolutely fascinating. Thanks, Una.